Okay, so welcome to Audit Workbench UAN training. My name is Matt Dean. I'm the development lead for UAN. I've pretty much written everything for Audit Workbench, so if it doesn't work right, you know who to contact now. And I'm going to go through pretty much from installation all the way through how to use the Audit Workbench product. I'm not going to spend really any time in the PowerPoint show. There is one, and you can contact Kim Blake, and she will be more than welcome to send it to you. So first things first, you'll receive a CD from us. That's the Audit Workbench installation CD. The first time you load the version 2012.1 Audit Workbench, it will take a long time, probably approximately an hour. During the process, it will install SQL Server. For the IPAs, they must have at least Windows XP Service Pack 3 or later. They must have, at bare minimum, 1 GB of RAM, preferably have at least 2 to 4. Also, at least have probably, I would say, a gig of hard disk space as well. Also, if you're going to be using the spreadsheet functionality of Audit Workbench, you must have Microsoft Office 2007 or later. And in the past, we used to just update Audit Workbench at year-end. This version of Audit Workbench will be updated as we update our client software, so you will see them more often. Typically, UAN sends out updates to clients 2 times a year, 1 time for budget, 1 time for year-end. Shortly after we send it out to our clients, you'll receive an Audit Workbench disk thereafter. For when to install it, if you're in the middle of an audit, don't install it. Wait until you're finished with the audit before installing it. I will be going over a data import-export utility. If you're working on as a team on an audit, wait until everybody on the team on that audit is done, because otherwise, when the file is exported, if the other person upgrades their version, they will not be able to import that file. So enough with the installation process. It's long, but it's basically just stick the disk in, hit next, 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 continue. Once it's done, it will prompt you to restart the computer, and it's ready to go. So I've already installed it because you don't feel like waiting an hour. And you'll notice we have 3 icons associated with the 2012.1 Audit Workbench product. It's the AWB Data Utility, the UAN icon, and UAN Tools. We're going to go ahead and start out with the AWB Data Utility. For those of you who have used Audit Workbench before, this should look really familiar. I guess some changes is you will no longer download by year. Currently, our accounting-only clients are the only ones that are on this, and they've only been on for 2011. So for the 2011, 2012, 2011, 2010 audit cycle, you will need to load it in the 2012 software, as well as load the 2010 and the version 16.0 software. Going forward, so let's say you're doing a 2011, 2012 audit of one of these accounting-only clients, you will only need to use this software, and you only need to pick 1 file. The file now will contain all their prior year information. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to pick our friends from here in Franklin County, the village of Harrisburg. And if you're an IPA, you will not be doing this process because you cannot hook into AOS's network. You will receive a disk from our office. It will auto-run. You just put it in, and it'll say the data has been loaded successfully, and you click OK. So after you download the data, you need to load it, just like you had to do in the old version. So we're going to go ahead and pick our entity type, pick the village, and click Load. And if you already have a data set loaded, it will prompt you it's going to overwrite. That's true. If there's anything in the you only can have one data set loaded at a time. So if there's anything existing in the database, it's going to be dropped, and this one's going to override it. So it takes a minute. Okay, so once it's done loading, you'll get this message. Important thing to note is the username and password. The previous version of Audit Workbench did not require this. The new one, we're trying to be a little more secure. It will set everybody up with the initial username of AWB user. The initial password will be UAN. When you log in the first time, you'll see here shortly, you will be prompted to change it. And when we change the password, I'll show you the complexity requirements, but basically it's the same standards that Microsoft has for their password changing. So let's make believe that we went into the application, changed our password, and we forgot what the password is. So we've got now a reset password screen. All you have to do is go in here, hit reset. It's going to change that user back to UAN, and when you log in, it will prompt you to change your password again. And the last function on this screen is the delete data. Delete data works like the delete data in the old. It just clears the downloaded files you have. It will not delete what's currently loaded in the database for UAN. It will not delete any export files that you've created, any spreadsheets, reports that you've PDF'd, etc. It just removes the files that have been downloaded. This is a nice feature because the new application data files that are downloaded get rather large, so they will take a sizable chunk of hard disk space. So any questions before I move on? Good. So after you have your data loaded, you go into the UAN icon. This is the main application. This is the exact same application that our clients have, except for the clients don't have the access to the Audit Workbench tab that you'll see here shortly. So I'm going to type in my AWB user. The username is not case sensitive. The password is case sensitive. So that message was a lowercase UAN, so I went ahead and typed in lowercase UAN. And you'll see it says my password is expired. Those are the requirements for what a password must have in it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to type in my current password, which is UAN, and I'm going to type in my new password. And it always helps if they match. Okay, so this is the new application. Just to kind of give you a brief overview, we kind of separate. If you remember the old old UAN, from the client's perspective, we had an accounting and payroll icon. We had a cemetery icon. We had an inventory icon. We brought all of that inside the UAN. So each of those, we call them modules, are now inside the application. Each module is made up of transactions, utilities, reports and statements, and maintenance. As auditors, we give you pretty much read-only access to everything. So you'll notice in accounting, we're not going to let you record new transactions, so the only thing you can get to is the reports and statements. The one exception, obviously, is the AWB tab, which is where you'll spend most of your time. Inside here, I'm going to go ahead and start with maintenance. And let's say you're performing your audit and client should have set up either a fund, revenue code, or appropriation line item that they didn't set up, like they misappropriated or had money in the wrong spot. What this will allow you to do is add new of those items. So I'm going to go ahead, just to show you, add a new fund. So you'll see here in the drop down, this will be all the funds that you can add. If they've already added, like you'll notice the general fund is not in this list. It's because if I move this out of the way, you'll see the general fund's already added, and you can't have more than one general fund in UAN. So this is the active list of funds that you can open up. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open up an internal service fund. Let's just say for some reason they should have had one. There's additional details down here for receives own interest, non-expendable fund, and unclaimed money funds. They don't really pertain too much to the way you guys will audit. It's more of when the clients use this application, because this is the same screen the clients use, that it puts certain constraints in UAN on how things can be spent. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. You'll see it says it saved it, and over here it added it to the list. If you want, let's say you added that fund and you're like, oh, no, I don't need that fund, you can check mark and you can remove it. If it's something that it's in the client's data set and you try to remove it, it's going to give you the error message that says it's part of the client's original file. We're not going to change any of the client's original data. Basically, everything you're recording is kind of in its own separate set of tables so that we can get the information from how the client originally filed their statements. So just to show you, also you can have more than one screen open. The appropriations work the same way. You pick a fund that's already open, pick a program. I don't know. Don't pay attention to my account code picking because I'm a programmer. I don't know what this should be done. So save when we open up that account code. I don't know if you guys remember in the old version 16.0 UAN application, we disallowed having summary and detailed objects being opened up for appropriation account codes. That is no longer the case. They can have them both open. We give them a warning message saying, hey, probably shouldn't do this. You either should be recording your stuff at a detail level or at a summary level, but we give them the option now. And the revenue counts work the same way. And just to show you, you can, let's say for the same fund you wanted to open multiple revenue accounts, I can check mark as many of these I want and hit save. And it adds them all at once. Any questions on adding new items to the client's data set? Her question is, does this roll up to the financial statements? The answer is no on the client's original filing, but on the audit filing, yes. So I'm going to skip over reports and statements for now, and we're going to go into the utilities. And this is probably where you'll spend most of your time, is in the audit adjustment utility. And just to kind of go over this screen, what it shows is this is where it's basically based off a screen that our clients have. It's where they determine certain things that we don't track in UAN, like how much of a fund is supposed to be unassigned, restricted other, or the GASB 54 classification purposes. This is also where if they actually filed OCBOA, they would do the set the programs for their revenues, do the internal service fund adjustment if they had an internal service fund, things like that. And you notice we put on here how they filed. So this client filed regulatory. If they filed modified cash, it would say modified cash. If they filed just cash basis OCBOA, it would be OCBOA cash basis up here. We don't allow you to change that status because if the clients want to change how they filed their AFR, they should go into their application, change the setting. If they need help doing that, they can contact the UAN support line and then resubmit their financials to UAN, and then you can re-download it. So I'm going to go into the general fund, and we're going to go ahead and edit this first as regulatory. So I have picked one of our great entities that is running with a negative fund balance in their general fund. One of our favorites. So kind of how this works is this is their beginning balance at the beginning of the year plus any fund balance adjustment. So if it's a negative fund balance adjustment, it would be plus the minus, so it would reduce the fund balance. These other boxes underneath are actually used for mostly the ACBOA statements. Investment balance would be their non-pooled investment balance, not their pooled investment balance. This is for the investment lines on the ACBOA statements. And this investment purchase and sale amount, that is for the statement of cash flows on the ACBOA statements. And if you wanted to, this comment field is for you guys to put comments in there. I think it holds up to 512 characters. Later on, I'll show you a report that will put on there the comments that you put on that you can hand to the clients and say, this is why we made the adjustments we needed to adjust. Also, while I'm here, let's say you're doing a 2-year audit. You normally do 2-year audits. So you've audited 2010, and they have a fund balance adjustment amount that you need to make for 2011. This is where you'd put that amount in for 2011 so that when everything's said and done and you get to the final financial statements, everything will look correctly. So let's say we did the 2010 audit. Their negative fund balance should have only been a negative $8,000 instead of a negative $9,000. We'll go ahead and put that in there. And we're going to move on to the revenue adjustments. The way you'll do adjustments now, you remember the old Audit Workbench, depending on what report it was, you had to go to that report, put the adjustment in. If it was the regulatory statements, it rolled up. If it was the ACBOA statements, it did not. You had to make that same adjustment on every report, every statement that was affected by that adjustment. We've now moved that inside the application, and we're going to have you make those adjustments on the individual account code level. So when you post the adjustments here, it will roll to every financial statement. And on those financial statements, you will have an option how to show that statement. There's an original mode, which will be the way the client filed it. There'll be an with adjustment column, so it will show the adjustments that you put that roll up into that line item. And then there's a final state that where if you choose that, it's how you guys said the statement should look like. But for revenues, we give you the revenue account name, the revenue code, and then you'll see in here amount received is going to be how much money they received in that revenue line item. If you need to make an adjustment, you put in the amount here. So let's say, nope, you received actually $500 less there, and this one should have had $500 more. And that's how you'd put the adjustments in. You'll also have in here for our ACBOA budgetary statements what their original budget was and what the final budget was. And you enter everything in the adjustment column, and it will calculate the final from taking the original and adding it to the audit adjustment. And the last column you have here is a comment. So you can type in whatever comments, reasons that you needed to make those adjustments. Any questions? Moving right along. Appropriations works exactly the same except for they just have different column headings. So you have, instead of revenues, you got the expenditures that came out of those line items. You still have your original budget. You have your final budget, which this is used on the ACBOA budgetary statement. And then you have these reserved for encumbrances. And which is basically their reserve for encumbrance at the end of that year. Next, you have the prior year encumbrances. That would be as of the beginning of the year that you're adjusting, what the adjustment should be. And this would be the gross prior year encumbrances. You have another thing called prior year encumbrance adjustment. What that is in UAN is, so if they carry over a purchase order, or when we have our payroll clients come on, they have carryover withholdings, they have a prior year encumbrance. If, let's say, they, especially for the case of the purchase order, they go and they close a purchase order without spending it entirely. They can't, it doesn't free up those resources so they can appropriate them, so we make this adjustment that will free up the money so that next year they can use the money, but this year they cannot. And then finally you have your comment column. I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to put something in. So then finally we get to the governmental fund classification tab. This is for the GASB 54 pronouncement, I guess would be the, I don't know if that's the correct term, but where they have to distribute their ending fund balance to what classification it should be. They have chose unassigned for the entire amount. We allow for you to have multiples. So let's say I don't want it all to be unassigned. I'm going to say it's let's say 17,000 of it is unassigned, and say restricted for Matt is the other $834. It'll let you put in there what the classification should be, and it's based off of the the adjusted balance that which you made your audit adjustments on. Because you'll see up here, you have your balance original, and then your final balance after all the adjustments have been made. If they went and did a multiple and you make audit adjustments, you're going to have to go in and edit what they have put in for their distribution, because we won't know how that money should line up. And obviously their fund balance has changed. If they just chose single, like the entire fund is in one bucket, then all we do is we take the entire fund balance and put it in that bucket. You'll also notice, let me go ahead and delete this. This turned to a red X. What that means is it's not completely filled out. If you don't finish it and have the undistributed equal to 0, you're going to get a big draft watermark over all your financial statements, because we know that everything's not filled out correctly. And actually when you go to save, you're going to get the thing saying the undistributed classification must equal to 0. Still going to let you save it, just in case you want to come back to it later. But on all the annual financial statements, it will put watermarks on there for if that fund is included in that statement. So I'm going to put my restriction back in there. And we're going to go ahead and save. That's it. That's how you post adjustments. At least they're quick and easy. Got a question over here. Go ahead.
Matt, just a quick question. On that previous screen that you were on, I had a tab for fund adjustments, revenue adjustments, and expenditure adjustments. The fund adjustments, that's for beginning year fund balance adjustments. But if I had a fund balance adjustment during 2011, say the general fund received $1,000 and it should have been in a street fund, I would do that in that revenue adjustments column. I wouldn't go back to that fund adjustments column to do that. That's correct?
That would be correct.
That would be correct.
Yeah. If it's anything during the year, you want to go ahead and do it in the appropriate line item that it came out of. I'm about to show you here if they misclassified a fund entirely, what you can do in the new. Any other questions? Okay. So you probably notice I kind of skipped these two fields here for mapping. The general fund, we have a hard rule in the application. We will not allow it to be mapped because everybody should have a general fund, and the general fund should not be mapped to any other fund. But let's say this fund, this 5702, let's say it should not have been in its own enterprise fund. Let's say it should have been in another enterprise fund. If you go in here and you choose map, you can pick any of the funds that are open. So I'm going to say this should have been in water operating. Let's say they've set it up as the water improvement, but it really should have been an operating fund. Now it will report all of its activity in that 5101 fund. And since you've made this mapping adjustment, it will show as an adjustment in a report that I'll show you later, and also on the financial statements. There's also a scenario that our clients will actually do this mapping. I believe LGS told us it was so if they have several, especially enterprise funds that should roll up and report as one enterprise fund, this is where they would do that. But let's say you're actually recording audit adjustments, we are going to still make you make the audit adjustments on the fund that had the activity. So, like saying, oh well, really you received an extra $1,000 here. You still put it, you do it on 5702. You do not go to the fund that you mapped it to. Now, one thing to be careful with mapping is we do not allow what I like to call daisy chaining. So you can't map a fund and then that fund you mapped it to, you map it to another fund. We disallow that. Let's say also the fund was originally mapped and you unmap it and you map another fund to it, and then you go there, we provide a function here where I go, oh, I really just want to start over on this fund. You check mark the fund, you hit reset. It's going to reset all the items back to the original state. If it was going to cause a daisy chaining situation, you would get a message saying these other funds have been unmapped because it would cause, I don't know the exact wording of the message, but it would say basically to the extent that you're going to daisy chain them. Got a question over here.
Matt, if you have an audit adjustment that's outside the audit period, we still have to call UAN for that adjustment outside the audit period, like a year prior to the audit. Is that a fair statement?
I guess I don't know exactly what you mean by that.
Okay, so if a fund balance in 2000, the ending balance in 2009, the adjustment was never made from an audit adjustment, we can't adjust the 2010 beginning balance going forward.
You can adjust the beginning balance. It's going to show up as an audit adjustment for this year. I don't know if you can put in the comment field saying something to the extent that the reason the beginning balance was adjustment was for an unposted fund balance adjustment for the end of fiscal year 2009.
So we don't any longer have to call UAN for that. UAN for that. In previous years we did.
Shouldn't have to. It should be able to post it in there, and it should show up on the statements. Now, you'll see later on that we've the audit adjustment report that we've came up with that hopefully you can give to our clients. it puts in nice big bold down at the bottom the fund balance adjustment number they should put into the application. And I'll even show you later on a screencast that we have on our website that will show you how to put in a fund balance adjustment. If you point that in the right direction to our clients, hopefully they're able to make their audit adjustments correctly now. So any other questions before I move on? Okay. Just to show you some additional things that you can adjust, if we do edit ACBOA, you'll see I have the fund classification. This is where on the statement of net assets where this money will roll up into. If it's not the general fund, you'd be able to here to determine it, you'd be able to change if it's a major fund or not. And also for the statement of net assets, you can distribute their balance to what is segregated in a segregated account, or it's in a fiscal escrow account. Now what this does is it does reduce their pooled balance. It's kind of how we track it in the software. And this is where the revenue utility is, where you would set what their revenue program is, and if it's a general receipt, where it falls in the general receipts. And just to show a little bit of differences, our internal service fund has the special internal service adjustment. It's for the statement of activities to reduce the amount received and the amount expended, so it's not double counted. The adjustments that you put in here have to match, and also if let's say they have multiple internal service funds, which let's say I'm about 99% sure none of our clients have 2 internal service funds, even 1 for most part, but 2 would be extremely rare. If they do have 2 internal service funds, this part is rolled up together for all internal service funds. So you make the adjustment as the gross for all internal service funds. And one last thing to show you. If you map a fund, you will notice you can no longer adjust the final stuff. That should be done on the fund that is being mapped to. And if I didn't say it earlier, I'll say it again now. I would do my mappings first, then start doing the audit adjustments, because a lot of the statements for the ACBOA reports and the fund classification stuff, you need to have your final balance, what it's going to be done, before making adjustments in those screens, in those sections of the screen. Any questions? Okay. I'm going to skip over the other utilities for just a moment, and we're going to go to our regulatory statements just to show you what I was talking about. So this is how in our new application we are rewriting our report screens. Most of them will have a list screen that you can make selections on. This one does not, because it's an annual financial statement, so you have to have everything selected. You have a year drop down here, which if you also noticed in the audit adjustment utility, there's a year drop down there as well. So when we get to 2012, 2011, and it's one of our accounting only clients, you would have both years here in the drop down that you can pick from, and you'd make adjustments in each of those years. So you can set your paper size, orientation. This one you can't change any of the date periods. Later on I'll show you some reports that you can change the date period. And then the most important thing is the options tab. So what we have here is how we want the report to come out. Do we want it in the original state? The original state is how the client sent it to UAN. With adjustment column means it will show, so on our combined statement, it would show general fund or general, then it would be general audit adjustment, and then general final. And then in its final state would be, it won't have the audit adjustment columns, it would just use those final numbers as what would show up on the statement. Kind of like how you have on the spreadsheets now. We just moved all that spreadsheet functionality inside the application. And one last option here is if you do decide to export it to Excel, I guess Teammate likes Excel better than Adobe. I'll show you here with each option. Basically, it is each page of the report can either put on a new sheet tab, or the report will just go on one long, it'll just be on the one sheet tab and it'll go all the way down until it's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do one with the adjustment column. I'm going to pick our combined governmental. When you change the report, it changes the options. This is a standard we have in the application. And I'm just going to display it first. Oh, the include GASB 54 worksheet is the detail information I'll show you down here at the bottom on what purposes they have. So I will zoom in to make this a little clearer. So you'll see here we've got our general fund, the audit adjustments I've entered for that general fund, and what the total should have been. And you'll see it just sums all the way down. And you see how I made that new restriction for assigned from everything was unassigned. I basically took a little over 4,000 out of it and put 800 in the restricted. And this is the worksheet where it shows for what they put in for those purposes. Just to show you what the final would look like. You'll see that now you no longer have the audit adjustment column. And it just shows how the statement will look. And to show you the export, so this setting does nothing when you hit print, display, save as PDF. It's only when you use the export. So I'll show you one. I'm going to say this is find out I'm going to minimize this for right now. So if I don't check that box, you'll see here come on Excel, you can do it. Okay. You'll see it looks like the statement. And you'll see as it prints a new page in paper, it's going to do a new page here. I imagine when you export to Excel, you're going to have to kind of massage it a bit to make it look the way you want to. I've also noticed with the report writer, it will sometimes truncate the headings. You'll have to kind of expand them a bit, but it gets most of the data out there, and you just have to do some minor formatting changes. So you see how this is how it's just all on one sheet. You see you only have one sheet there. If I open up the other one, hopefully it won't take as long to open. You'll see each page is its own sheet. There's my little purpose for Matt. Okay, we got a question in the back.
File.
want to export the file, can you tell it where to save, or does it automatically save the default file that they save as home?
The question is it, when you export the file, does it let you choose where to save it? It will, I believe how the algorithm goes is it will first default to this directory called _UAN _E files. That's where everything in the previous application used to export to. If that directory doesn't exist, it will it'll prompt for your My Documents. But you can move it to where you notice that dialog box is the standard save dialog box that you'll see in Windows. So if I hit, I'm just going to choose save this PDF. I can just go to my computer, and let's say I want it to go into the no backup folder. I can just put it there and hit save, and it'll go there. Any other questions? Okay. I didn't fill out all the OCBOA stuff, so you'll notice if I actually go into the OCBOA reports, and I try to display it, it's going to give me this nasty message. It's basically telling you you need to go to the utilities and fill everything out. If you don't have the GASB 54 classifications filled out completely, you will get this on the regulatory side as well. It'll ask if you want to still display the report. I'm going to say okay, even though the numbers aren't going to make any sense. But you'll notice you get the big do not file draft watermark on your report. And you'll see it has the same options as the other ones. And you'll see each report sometimes will have their own little unique options, like net assets and the statement of activities. You can check mark this show detail. It's not as the statement should be, but it will show you what funds make up each amount in the report, and what activities, what line items go into each column and row. So to finish off utilities, we have a component unit utility. I imagine, again, like 99% of our clients don't have component units. If you needed to add a component unit or edit one they have, it works just like the other utility does. Since originally there was not a component unit, you'll see this is blank, but you can come in here, type in the name, and fill out the information. If it's a component unit the client has added originally, the name would be read-only. But for the component units, you're just putting in what its final state is. There is no adjustment column to enter. You just, I guess you would go to that component and say, hey, give me your audited statement, and put in those numbers. So, fancy new feature. Got requests that, what if we want somebody to review our work? How can they do that in this new application? And what we've added is the data import and export utility. What that does is, so let's say you have trusted auditor so-and-so, enter all the adjustments that are supposed to be in the audit, and it needs to go to the audit manager for approval. They'd enter all their adjustments, and they would go in here, and they would export their data. And they would choose the browse option. From here, they need to type in where they want it to go. I'm going to just keep it in this new, it's going to default to where, it's either going to go to the _UAN files, My Documents, or wherever the last time you saved anything else was, because it kind of keeps that setting in memory. I'm just still going to leave it here, no backup. And by default, we name it the entity ID, the entity name, and the county it's in. If you wanted to change the name for some reason, you can. You go ahead and save it, and it exported the data successfully. Great. Let's say I'm the audit manager and I want to review these. To review them, you need to A, be on the same version of Audit Workbench as they are on, and then you need to use that load data utility and load the initial data set of what the client filed. Then what you would do is you would go into the same utility, you would choose import, you'd browse, you'd find the file, we'd make the file in with the handy-dandy.awb extension. You go ahead and say open, save, and it's going to give you this important warning. The important warning is if you have any new funds you added, new revenue codes, made any audit adjustments, done anything to the data set since the client has done it, those changes are going to go away and whatever's in this file will replace it. I'm just going to go ahead and say OK because it's actually the same information. And after it chugs along for a little while, it'll tell us it's done. And the files, I'll show you. They're not that big, so you should be able to email it, and the information that would be potentially sensitive is encrypted in that file, so it's not like something that somebody can get. The only things that aren't encrypted are just numerical values. That's already public record. Basically what's exported is all their funds, all their revenues, all their appropriations, any component units, any adjustments you've made, and all those little utilities that you fill out for the revenue programs, the internal service adjustments, all those tables that have that information are exported into that file. And if you had multiple years in there, it will import all those years. But if you've made any, let's say that that file was only for 2011, you had 2012 on your system done, it's going to erase 2012 and put whatever's in there. So it is what's in that file. Any questions on this? Good. Quiet class is the way I like it. So go ahead. Go ahead.
Matt, just a quick question. If I'm reviewing a file and that a staff auditor is completed and I see an audit adjustment's done incorrectly or I need to add an audit adjustment, can I do that during my review process?
Yes, you could. You will have the regular version of Audit Workbench, so you can do whatever adjustments you want. You can save additional adjustments. You can re-export that file and tell the person that re-import this file because this has the final changes that are good to go. Okay, so the last thing in this AWB tab we haven't gone over is our handy dandy Audit Workbench Adjustment Report. And you'll see in here we've got a filter, which is you didn't have on the other ones. The filter on here is you can either produce a report for all funds and all items, or only things that I've made adjustments for. If you've added any new funds, added any new revenue codes, added new anything, it will show up as an adjusted item automatically. And you'll see this report sorted by fund number, and each fund will be on its own new page. So just to show you this report, it'll be kind of hard to see on the screen, but it's basically everything you saw in that utility screen is on the report. And it shows you, okay, well, originally you had everything as unclassified, but we posted these adjustments, so now in its final state it is this. And the thing I most like is this number right here. Our fund balance adjustment amount. It's in bold for our clients so they can see, like, this is what you should be putting in your system. And just, I know I went over it earlier, but I can't stress it enough. When they're putting the fund balance adjustments in, let's say this is 2011 and 2012 audit cycle, and you have both years' information in here, you've made adjustments to both years, that they only want to put the fund balance adjustment number in of the latest year, not both years, or they're doubling up the adjustments. And that's why we even put a little handy footnote at the bottom of the report. Also, I know I didn't mention this, when, let's say you do have both years in this application, when you make adjustments in, let's say, 2011, they're not going to automatically cascade to 2012. You have to go into 2012 and adjust the beginning balance for those adjustments you made in 2011, just like as if it was on another complete application. But this is the handy dandy report. Hopefully we print that footnote on every page so that hopefully it drives home the message to our clients. This is what should be done, and that's the amount. Any questions on that report? I don't know how helpful it will be to you guys. I'm hoping for our clients, if you give it to them, it kind of maybe will give them a summary of what was adjusted. You'll notice that if I did type in comments, they would have shown up here, and on the account code level, it would show up there as well, so that they could be able to read your comments and hopefully understand why you've made the adjustments you've made. Any questions? Okay. So these were next two reports I'm going to go over. They're available to our clients also, just because we wanted to warn them that, hey, Audit's going to have these reports too. But just to show you them also, we have added a compliance and backdating report. I guess part of the new methodology of the application is the date is no longer controlled by the clients. It moves with the clock, so it moves as in time. So whenever they record a receipt is the date the receipt is recorded. They can pick a different post date, and they can potentially pick it in the past, but we consider that backdating, and we warn them it will show up on a backdating report. We let them backdate all the way up to the previous bank rec recorded, or the beginning of the year, whichever is, I guess, latest. Hopefully they're doing their bank recs, but you never know. So we're going to go ahead and go in here and look at the backdating. So you'll see our friends at Harrisburg have backdated. So you want to see by how, we show you how many days are between, and some little information about the transaction. When we actually go into the report, it'll give you some more detailed information. But what I like about all of our applications is our grids are sortable. So we can see here, for some reason, we'll go into that detail a little more. They posted an interest receipt to a secondary account for January 31st on actually December 12th. Don't know why, but they did. And you see now in this report, we do turn back on the date ranges. So you wanted to see, okay, in December, how many things were they backdating? Well, it looks like 68 items. And this date, though, is going off the post date. Yes. So I guess the better thing would have been look at, I'm going to pick January and see how many things they've backdated to it. More than likely, you may want to look at this report as a year basis, but the option is there to do that, or a selected date period. I'm just going to pick a few of these. Now I'm going to display it. And what it shows you on this report, I guess the pertinent information is the transaction number will help you go back to other reports to see what they were doing. But you'll see it was an interest receipt they were posting to those account codes for those amounts. That's some of the information of the receipt. That's the purpose they put on their receipt. And this is the actual information for those receipts. If it's a payment, you'd have the payment number and payment type. If it was a purchase, you had the purchase number, purchase type. If it was any other transaction, you would kind of have to read what's in this transaction description to know what it is. So like let's say they posted they backdated an advance or backdated a transfer, it would say in here what that is, and then there's interfund transfer reports or interfund advance reports that you could go back on that transaction number and see what they were doing. So that's the backdating report. Any questions on that? Prior UAN used to be the ultra stiff application that we will not let you do wrong. You can do no wrong. We will not let you. We had to open up a little more flexibility. So now it is, if you do wrong, we will tell you, and by default, we will not let you. But you can change an option in the application, or if they've actually backdated the item, we have to assume that it already happened because it was in the past. They can override the compliance issue, and they have a purpose box. They should be typing in the reason why they overrode the compliance. So I'll give you some greatest hits here of compliance. Now obviously we saw that beginning fund balance was negative. That automatically means they have compliance issues off the bat because that's an insufficient fund balance, and that's why you'll see there's a lot on this entity. Hopefully as the year goes on they don't have as many, but it doesn't really look like it on here. So I'm going to go ahead and display just to show you what information we have on the report. We'll show you the date that the transaction was posted for, so the date they picked, the date they actually did it, transaction number, who the user was. The user will be the username they set up. So some people, like this entity, put their full name. Others go with like a kind of like how a network would work, and they'd put in like initials. That's whatever they set up as the username. The setting is the compliance setting, and you see here it was set to stop. Stop means normally we will not let you process the transaction, and you have to fix whatever so you can post it. The exception is if the item is backdated. If you noticed over here, the posting date was January 1st, transaction date was February 8th. So it's a backdated item. We require them to put a purpose in there, but we will let the transaction go on if they hit the override button. Then you have reasons for override. So since they were stopped, they were required to put one in there. And for some reason, they put UAN test in there for one of them. This is real data. I don't know why. But they should be putting in there. They can put in up to 512 characters why they're overriding the compliance issue. And then this will say what the source or use was. It'll tell you if it was a payment or a receipt or a purchase, and what thing actually caused the compliance issue. So this first one was insufficient amount available for appropriation. Well, that's a fund level item, so it's Fund 1000. But as you see down here, insufficient unencumbered balance, that's actually on the appropriation line item, so that's why that one shows the appropriation code that caused the issue. One transaction can cause a plethora of compliance issues. So you can see the same transaction in there, basically all the same information, except for the thing you'll see change is the compliance description. Any questions on this? Hopefully this will kind of wave red flags to the auditors like, hey, they're not doing things right. They shouldn't be doing this, and you guys can investigate more on why they're doing things. So those are the two audit-based reports that we added for our clients and you that's in the application. The rest of the reports in the applications are open season. It's everything the client has, you can get into. So just kind of how the modules work. Accounting is going to have all their accounting information. When we get payroll done, estimated the end of this year, which means we'll be taking them on for fiscal year 2013. Payroll tab will be enabled if they were a payroll client. Budget is basically a lot of the schedules and the financial worksheet that they prepare for their mid-year submission to their county auditor. It's not their appropriation budget. It is not their revenue budget. That is in accounting. Inventory is their inventory application. And then in general, it's the items, how the report screens works is how you select the items. So the methodology was, well, if it goes across more than one module, we'll kind of put it in this general area. So like a vendor is a general item. So if you're looking for a report like for vendor payments, it's going to be under general reports and statements, vendor payee reports. This is also where the regular AFR statements are for the clients, and we don't support those adjustments on like the additional regulatory statements. I can't think of them. Like the comparison of budget and actual receipts, the reconciliation of interfund transactions. If you wanted to see that information, you would come here to get that. Other accounting reports, just some of the ledgers. Cash journals under cash reports. Appropriation reports will have your appropriation ledger. Fund reports have fund ledger, and the receipt reports would have your receipt listings and stuff. Any questions here? And also you have to just kind of go around. Each report has their own options and settings. Some of them will let you start each fund on a new page. Some of them limit how your dates can be selected. For more information on that, I like to direct you down here to what it says FAQs. This, if it's something that's in the normal client software, a lot of them will have these frequently asked question links here. All you have to do is go down there and click on it. And of course my machine's running at an all-star pace today, but it will open up the manual to that section. And this is the entire accounting manual. So if you wanted to look for the chart of accounts for a township or whatever, this is the UAN chart of accounts for a township. Another place to get the manual is this Need Help button. It does the same thing. And if you wanted, there's a little calculator for you guys. Or a calendar. And if you're so obligated, you can change the colors of your software. Now, those settings are going to be saved in that data set. So if you load another data set, that color scheme is going to go back to the default color scheme. That's what I have shown here. But if for some reason you don't like this color scheme, you can change the color scheme and then move on your merry way. So, any questions on the general accounting reports we have inside the application? It's pretty much all the same reports that you had last time. Very minor changes to any of them. The only thing I could think of would be what I'm going to show you here next is our spreadsheet exports. I believe the old expenditure export did not include memo receipt expenditures. The new one does. Other than that, the reports are pretty much the exact same definition as what was in the old. And it's read-only. The reports are read-only. So the last thing we'll go over is what happened to the spreadsheets. Well, you just saw about 95% of it we just brought into the application. The last remaining pieces would be how you can group payments, group receipts, and the pulling of payments by random and by a fund and those things. And what you would do is you go back to AWB under reports and statements. You have this payment receipt export.
And the purpose for the spreadsheets is so that we can, as auditors, can manipulate that data and sort it for our purposes of testing versus the applications in UAN where it's read-only.
That is correct. And also, Excel provides a better environment to do some of that sorting and stuff than what would be provided inside this application. You might as well, Excel's already written it, I don't need to rewrite it again. So we're going to go ahead and export this. And I'm just going to leave it in the default directory, but you can save this wherever you want. If you want to save it to your desktop, save it to your desktop. And this does take a while, because besides exporting all your payments and all your receipts, it's exporting all the funds, revenues, and appropriations and things behind the scenes that are needed. So when we get to, you'll see some of the new features we put in, it works better. And the great news is, if you have a larger entity, it takes even longer. This entity is like a pretty small village in Franklin County. It's small to medium size. It just has a lot of data to provide for Excel to make it work right. Got a question while we're waiting.
Okay, I see up there by year it has system year. No, that would include any post-dated items that maybe were not posted until January of 2012.
That would be the system year they're working in. So let's, I guess, with the front end and back end of year end, so they get to the end of, let's say it's January 1st, 2012. We don't automatically move them to 2012. They have to do a year-end closing procedure before we actually let them go into 2012. So those would still report in system year 2011. Now, we have a future enhancement coming up that will be temporary mode for accounting, so that they can have both years open for about 60 days. So let's say, and we won't let them open that up until they get into, I believe, December 31st. So let's say they open that up and they record a transaction. They're sitting in December, but they actually record it for January. Well, since they chose to go into 2012, it will record for 2012. So our export has finished. So I'm going to go open up the spreadsheet. And what you see here is you have your, this should look really familiar for the receipt if you've used the old Audit Workbench, the information on this, because it is essentially the same information. Same thing with receipts. But you've noticed, where have my macro buttons gone? Where's my little warning message about enabling macros and all that jazz? It's no longer there. What we've gone to is now add into Excel. So you'll see when I opened up that spreadsheet, an AWB tab has appeared. If I go there, you'll notice I have all these handy dandy Audit Workbench functions. Now, before I get too much further into this, let's say you do whatever to this spreadsheet and you send it off to somebody else and they have not installed this version of Audit Workbench. They will not get that Audit Workbench tab. But they can see whatever information's in the spreadsheet just like it was a normal spreadsheet to as anything else. So just to kind of go over the functionalities, I'll start with payments. You have your sort by here, which will sort by the same sort bys that you used to have. This sort by and the sort by for receipts are only enabled for the sheet that you have activated. And you notice little messages come up when you switch between them for why it's disabled. So the payment spreadsheet is only going to be able to be sorted if it's the original one that we've exported, or it's done through the pull payments worksheet that's not grouped by fund. Once we do anything that has any grouping in it, we can no longer sort it because it won't sort right. And that's why you'll see on receipts its message is it's only for the original worksheet, because once you do a grouped receipt worksheet, it's grouped. But you'll see I can just pick post date. I could pick payment amount, just like you did in the old. So we're going to go to pull payments, and what it does is it creates a new worksheet tab. You notice that you don't have that sorted receipts button anymore, or sorted, was it called sorted payments? It's something to that extent. You'll see what will happen here momentarily when we choose to create one of these. So this should look familiar for the old pull payments. You pick your payment type. Once we get clients that use our payroll application you can use payroll wages and payroll withholdings. The accounting only clients are accounting only as in our application. They obviously either do payroll by hand or do payroll through some third-party vendor. It doesn't mean the line items they charge aren't payroll line items. It's just it was not done in our payroll application, so they're not considered payroll warrants or payroll withholdings. So largest works the same as it did previously. By fund works the same as it did previously. We have made one change to the random. We have now added a minimum option and a maximum option. So if you want to do a dollar range, you want random number of payments between, let's say they must be at least $500, but less than, I don't know, 2,000. It will pull a random number of payments between there. So let's say I only want 10 of them. It'll sit here and chug a little bit, and then you have your sheet tab. You notice it created a brand new sheet. You can have as many of these as you want, up to whatever Excel's maximum limit is for sheet tabs. If you don't like how we name it, which is basically if it was a payment, it's a payments down here at the bottom. When we get to receipts, it will put receipt down at the bottom, the date, and then the time. You can just go down here and say random pull. Make it whatever you want. But it has all the same information as it did before, and you can manipulate this however you want. We've also added a new, the buttons here are not specific. These three big ones, they're not specific to what sheet tab is open. You can have, I'll show you here later, I'll click on receipts, or I can just do it now. Here, I'll have receipts active. I can still click on a new payment grouping worksheet. The payment group worksheet works like what we had on receipts, where you pick the, I guess basically the combined and combining line items and what funds you want to see that information for. So let's say I want to see everything in security, persons, and property for the general fund, and then, I don't know, contractual services for sewer operations. And you hit save, it will create another new sheet here shortly. You see it named it payments, date, and time, but you can rename that to whatever you want. And this one, you notice I can no longer sort, because you'll notice it's grouped by general fund as all these ones. And then the water, sewer is that. And how this works is just like the receipt one. If, let's say I would have picked multiple line items and one fund, or in multiple funds, it will group, it'll go by fund, and then each of the line items in that fund then give you a fund total. Then it'll go to the next fund, do those line items, and give you a total. And you'll see the receipt works the same way. So you see general fund, there's my property, other local taxes, everything in municipal income tax, intergovernmental, and then I guess my permissive motor vehicle license tax. Didn't get any money from those line items. Now, this is their original data. Any audit adjustments you make will not affect these spreadsheets inside the application. You post audit adjustments and you re-export the spreadsheet, you're going to get this same thing again. So it's unaffected by mapping. So if I mapped a fund to another fund, the fund that I pick in the list is the actual fund that it was reported into in the application. Any questions? One in the back.
I'm assuming from here there wouldn't be any problem with like copying or moving those tabs into a separate workbook, so we don't have a huge workbook for saving and uploading in the teammate. We can copy and move those and save them separately and then put them in our sections that we're testing.
Actually, since it's now an Excel add-in versus the way the old one was with all of its macros, you'll notice it's only 210 kilobytes. You probably don't have to do that because that's at least my estimation, that's a pretty small file. It's less than a meg. So I think Teammate should be able to handle it. I don't know much about Teammate or what its capabilities are, but I would think it should be able to hold a 210 kilobyte file if it wants to, yeah. But if you want to export it to let's say you have a whole bunch of them in there and you want a clean final one, you can export it into another workbook. Now that AWB tab would be disabled because it would not know it came from Audit Workbench. It wouldn't have the embedded information that's inside this workbook that's needed. If there's nothing else, that's all I've got. If you have any questions, you can see me now. Oh, got one in the back.
We have audits coming up that are 2010, 2011. So when we put the disk in, it's not going to override the prior UAN, so we can use both.
Correct. It will let you have both the 16.0 and the 2012.1 version installed at the same time. And they're two completely separate installs, and they're two separate directories, so they don't interact with each other at all. Okay. Thank you very much.